Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Daily India Report and our daily news update, the 9 o'clock news. Coming directly to you from Brisbane, where the weather at this point in time is bright and sunny, looking beautiful out the window there, and the temperature at the moment is about 16 degrees, and it will get up to 24 degrees, we've been told, during the course of the day. Well, right now in this segment with the news and everything, because we have at 10 o'clock the real estate update with Usha Chandra. Well, right now, as we know, the vaccine rollout is meant to be in the best interest of the nation. But as a nation, we have our different states, we have our different premiers, and defined by our borders, we are trying to contain the pandemic as best as we can and trying to get to that magic number of vaccination in the due time. Well, during the national meeting and all the premiers, when they got together at the national cabinet, they all decided on how it will be moving forward. But unfortunately, things have turned a little bit sour in New South Wales. And according to that, some extra doses had to be sent there. But it didn't go down well with the other premiers. Here's why.
The race to vaccinate the nation just turned ugly.
What I didn't know was that Premier Berejiklian's in a sprint while the rest of us are supposed to do some sort of egg and spoon thing.
The Commonwealth accused of giving New South Wales a head start.
We can't be criticised every day by the Prime Minister and Mr Frydenberg and everyone else for not vaccinating at the same rate as New South Wales when they don't give us the same number of vaccines per capita as New South Wales.
The state has surged ahead. Since its Delta outbreak, New South Wales has received hundreds of thousands of Pfizer doses above its per capita share. Most came from the one-off deal with Poland. The rest were brought forward at the expense of Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia and Queensland.
As we've had outbreaks, we've prioritised those areas to save lives.
There needs to be a reckoning.
According to the federal government, there will be. The states and territories are being guaranteed they will end up with their fair share, and sooner rather than later. The extra Pfizer from the UK ensuring supplies no longer an issue. But politically, this squabble with the states risks reinforcing the perception that the Prime Minister favours his home state. Just as he faces questions about a weekend dash to Sydney.
You can't have one rule for Mr Morrison and another rule for everyone else. I just think it's appalling judgment.
It's a bit of a cheap shot, to be honest. I mean, Bill knows full well what these rules are.
The Prime Minister says he followed them. Flying home to see his family for Father's Day, he then sought an exemption from the ACT to return to Canberra.
The suggestion that somehow this was an unusual arrangement for members of Parliament, indeed ministers, well, that just wouldn't be true.
Under the rules, he's subjected to regular COVID tests and can only travel between the Lodge and Parliament House.
This is the nation's capital. It is the heart of Australian democracy, and so it does need to be able to function.
But with both jurisdictions in lockdown and millions of families separated,
it's not really a particularly good look.
And in politics, it's the perception that can prove problematic. Jane Norman, ABC News.
And of course, it is the thing to do, is being with the family. But of course, as people have said, that one rule applies for everyone, and that you should lead by example. I'll leave it up to you.
An illegal gathering in lockdown Melbourne has descended into aggression and violence, with a TV cameraman injured and police set to hand out dozens of fines. An all-day standoff came to a head last night outside a synagogue in Ripponlea in Melbourne's inner east, where police had been waiting for worshippers to end a gathering.
The crowd became aggressive toward police and media, pushing cameras and yelling. A TV cameraman was concussed after being hit on the head. Let's go straight to Stephanie Ferrier, who's at the scene. Steph, do we have any more idea about the details of how it all played out yesterday?
Good morning, Lisa. Yes, well, it's quiet down here except for a series of police officers that are guarding all these entrances to the synagogue, but it was a completely different story last night. I'm here in Ripponlea in Melbourne's southeastern suburbs, and right behind me is this synagogue, which is where people allegedly had been illegally gathering here. Now, they did emerge just before the curfew that we have here operating in this state at 9 o'clock, and it was a situation where police obviously tried to come towards them and let them know that they would be fined, and then we saw the situation becoming quite aggressive. Let's have a look at what happened.
He's taking videos of us. Yeah, he's allowed to. No, he's not. Yeah, he just said it. He just said it. He's not out of my face. This gentleman hit me.
So we can see there that it was quite a chaotic scene for police here, and police have said that they are going to fine all adults here with a $5,452 fine. There were also children here that were present, but they will not be fined. Police are also searching for some people who managed to flee during the chaos. And as you mentioned earlier, there was also a TV cameraman who was struck quite forcefully on the head, and he is being treated at the moment for concussion. Now, we did hear from Premier Daniel Andrews earlier yesterday, and he said that he appreciated that this was a very important moment during the Jewish New Year celebrations for those people within that religion, but he did say that there had been, obviously a lot of issues in terms of wanting to make sure that everybody could abide by the restrictions that we have here at the moment. The ABC understands that special arrangements had been made so that Jewish people could actually safely commemorate the New Year safely at home, and we have heard from the Jewish Communities Council, and they have said in the past that they have condemned action where people have breached restrictions. They declined to make any comment during this time because it is, of course, this religious high period for them. However, they have said in the past that this is definitely not representative of the wider Jewish community.
So there you go. It is not representative of the wider Jewish community. This is a hard balancing act. People like to get together for their religious activities, but of course there's a lockdown, and of course rules need to be put in place. And as we saw for Father's Day, the Prime Minister could fly in and fly out, be with his family and go out. And at the synagogue, the community was not allowed to get together. The gathering. What the point is that rules are rules and they need to be followed, and of course it is hard times, and on overall scheme of things, I think we've been very good. If you look at many times that gatherings and other things could have happened, and many things where people have refrained, including many of the big events that had been cancelled. Even here, Gopia Queensland had to postpone its iconic India Day fair from 15th August, which is a very significant day for that event to take place. So, provisions had to be made. So, these are strange and very challenging times that we are living in, and we need to abide by those rules and follow that. But it needs to follow through right across the board, from the top, bottom, and so that a good example is set. No one can point fingers as anyone like that. But of course, leading on from here, as people are saying that we are still okay, meaning that the full impact of the economic downturn has not yet been felt. And mark my words, coming days, coming years, the effect will flow on, because what is happening is we are in the buffer zone, absorbing a lot of that, but in moving forward, there will be a demand for social security services, and how is Australia going to keep up with that?
This reserve on the banks of the Murrumbidgee River is home to some of the most vulnerable in the community. But the statewide lockdown doesn't discriminate.
It doesn't matter whether you live in a tent or a caravan, or you're living in a U-Butte nice luxury home. The restriction applies to everybody, so no one can escape it. So it doesn't matter what level in the community you come from, how rich you are, how poor you are. This one pandemic is doing the one thing, and what it's showing us is it doesn't matter where you come from in society, what you do, how much money you make. The virus will just attack whoever's unfortunate enough for it to latch onto, and that's your lot, and that's just the way it is.
Unlike some of his neighbours, Chris says he's got enough food and shelter, but lockdowns put a stop to his volunteer work at the local men's shed.
Oh, well, I can't interact with the other elderly gentlemen that work there, and my friends and that, and you know, utilise my time and help the community, so that's pretty sad.
I think the number of people who are looking to seek temporary accommodation has grown because of the situation.
This community centre in Wagga Wagga would normally be bustling with people, collecting basic supplies, getting out of the cold or seeking counselling. Lockdown means a new approach is needed.
Definitely a new approach is needed, as we know that even here in Brisbane there are many community organisations who are helping the homeless and of course feeding the needy. But as was said in that report, that a new approach needs to be needed, and that need will be fulfilled by people adapting to the circumstances, changing rules and changing the norms. Many things which were normal before will never go back to being that normal. So what it means is that there will be changes that will be made, changes that will be permanent, meaning that you will have to live with these new conditions and just get used to it. Community centres and many things like that, even not-for-profit organisations who have been helping people, the way the service has been delivered will have to be changed, because it will not be relevant. You will not be allowed to do many things that you were before. A lot will have to be said about the second-hand clothing and etc. The salvos, many things. People would now be a bit reluctant to get those things, and even though that was helping a lot of people. So there are many things that will change. Well, some for the better. One thing for sure is people have become more conscious of their hygiene. And of course, the social distancing, I witnessed that every day in the lifts. And of course, the way before used to be crowded, cramped in. People were, up against each other. Now, everyone, if there's 2 or 3 in each corner, and as soon as you pass someone, you see people trying to pass as far away as possible. In buses, as you can see, single person per seat. Of course, sometimes you get another person coming in, sitting by. But, these are the new norms. So what will be the future? What will the contact tracing look like? How are we going to move forward?
Through July, when Canberra was a COVID-free oasis...
Where was the location?
Its contact tracing team was busy at work assisting New South Wales with the rapidly escalating Delta outbreak in Sydney.
We don't know the suburbs so well in Sydney, so a lot of our people that were doing the interviews did comment that it's very, very challenging.
I have about 6 more contacts to do at the moment.
Okay. Behind all the interstate bickering that has dominated the politics of this pandemic, there has been a quiet, effective layer of interstate cooperation on health resources, like vital contact tracing.
Last year we sent some of our staff down to Victoria. I think it was in about July last year when they had their first sort of outbreak down there. Everyone's been open to calling in that help.
But it's a fragile web, and almost like in bushfire season, the capacity to offer help depends on one's own state not being ablaze.
It's the Canberra club that's led to a COVID cluster.
When the virus finally arrived in the capital a few weeks ago, Rebecca Hundy had no choice but to pull her team back.
It was pretty much immediate. It was all hands on deck from that first moment. We just pulled all of our own resources in to focus on that case.
The rest of the country might just see Canberra as the home of the federal parliament, some as a population of fat cat public servants and an affluent middle class. But despite its reputation, when COVID arrived in the city after it was virus-free for a year, Chief Minister Andrew Barr saw the national capital rapidly tick almost every unwanted box on the COVID bingo card.
Vulnerable communities, public housing, community housing, homelessness, shelters, people who are sleeping rough becoming infected.
The detection of COVID in just 2 Canberra schools made 20,000 people, or close to 5% of the entire population, close contacts who had to go into quarantine, not just lockdown. Finding them was a lot easier, but it still had a massive impact on the city.
And that impacted on frontline health workers, it impacted on policing, it impacted on our emergency services agency and on government's ability to deliver our pandemic response. It also flowed through into the private sector as well. So very significant implications from having, it's not just your caseload, it's also all of the people who then have to isolate and quarantine.
And Canberra's future could be instructive for the rest of the nation too, as it attempts to maintain very low levels of the virus while literally surrounded by a jurisdiction taking a different course. The Doherty Institute's modelling says Australia can handle an outbreak without too much death after 80% of our people are vaccinated without lockdowns, but on the presumption that our infection control measures like contact tracing are running at an optimal level.
Even in a city like Canberra, in a community like Canberra, that we've been able to get about 85% of our cases linked, and linked pretty quickly. But there are still mystery cases, even in a community that's not quite 500,000 people.
The potential incubation period is so much shorter, so in terms of that ability to get people into quarantine before they're infectious, that opportunity has been shortened.
The sheer weight of numbers, the outbreaks in particular communities, and the rapid infection rates of the Delta variant are changing the way contact tracing is working and what contribution it will play in the future.
In Western Australia, we've been able to maintain assistance to other states pretty much throughout.
Unlike the ACT, WA is still free of COVID, so its contact tracers are still helping with the Sydney outbreak.
Was it during the same time?
Casual observers may think that, at over 1,000 cases a day, the Sydney cluster would simply be too big to trace, but not so.
The basic principles of contact tracing are of benefit if you have one case in your community or if you have more than 1,000.
Initially it was very big, yeah.
The role of contact tracing is really a targeted form of lockdown. So rather than the whole community being asked to stay at home, we find those most at risk of getting COVID and we ask them to stay at home.
It may be that, as probably New South Wales are finding now with so many cases, you may have to prioritise certain cases, high-risk settings like aged care facilities, schools, that kind of thing. If you can focus on households and protecting those people who are, more vulnerable to the disease, that I think is where we can have the most impact with the contact tracing.
We are entering a transition phase at the moment. The role of contact tracing will change as more people catch the virus but may not show signs of having it because they are vaccinated. There is more talk about the use of rapid tests for COVID and for more home quarantine. Vaccination rates are thankfully starting to really accelerate. The transition phase is likely to last through September and October at least. But the changeover in the mix of public health responses could be a brief but critical window of time.
This really all comes down to a critical, probably 2 to 4 weeks. Where we aim to get well above 70%, cross the 80% threshold and hopefully go beyond. And that's the period of greatest risk where the test, trace, isolate and quarantine capability, TTIQ, will not be as effective.
So when's that period going to be?
I think it's going to vary actually across the nation. In New South Wales, ACT and Victoria, it could well be October, November into early December. For some other states it might be more November and December.
Part of that will depend on when different jurisdictions reach vaccination targets, but part of it will depend on the politics of staying closed or opening up.
We need to be having some serious discussions.
Last week, Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk was condemned for arguing the Doherty Institute modelling suggested 80 people a day would die at 70% vaccination rates. Today, New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian suggested her state could be opened up to doubly vaccinated people at 70%.
When we get to 70% in New South Wales, there's no doubt people will experience many more freedoms, much more freedoms than what we're experiencing today.
In charge of a jurisdiction that is both small and which was COVID-free for a year, Andrew Barr is an interesting participant and observer of the political brawls taking place among his colleagues in the National Cabinet. Is it too political?
On balance, I think the National Cabinet has been a net positive. It's been a moderating influence on some of the Prime Minister's early instincts. It's also helped to allow premiers and chief ministers to discuss issues, to moderate each other a little, not fully, clearly. And I think this group of First Ministers have met more than any other in Australian history. Sometimes that puts us into conflict, but a lot of the time it's led to better decisions and better pandemic management for Australia.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
Stay well, and don't forget that at 10 a.m. next up they will be coming with the latest on real estate, and we'll bring to you the market updates for today. Well, right now it's time to go to our daily India report, and with that let's welcome to Ankita.
Welcome to the Daily India report that brings you glimpses of the changing India and the growing engagement of the Indian diaspora with India. In our first story, India is watching the Afghanistan situation closely as the Taliban declares it will form the government on the ominous date of September 11th. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a high-level meeting on 6 September on the Afghanistan situation with the top brass that included Home Minister Amit Shah, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. India has been in a wait-and-watch mode and closely following the fast unfolding developments. Notably, the meeting follows an announcement earlier in the day when Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid said the war in Afghanistan is over and the formation of a new government will be announced in a few days. Mujahid said the decision-making process on the formation of a new Afghan government has been completed and now only technical issues remain. Reports said the Taliban will most likely to form a government on September 11th, coincidentally the same date when Al-Qaeda terrorists attacked the USA in 2001 that claimed the lives of nearly 3,000 people. The Taliban has also said that Panjshir became the last of 34 Afghan provinces to fall under their control. Claims of Taliban takeover of Panjshir came after days of intense fighting between the invading Taliban and the forces loyal to National Resistance Front chief Ahmad Massoud, who put up stiff resistance. 4 persons of Indian origin died due to drowning, while 2 are missing as Hurricane Ida caused massive floods that ravaged the states of New York and New Jersey in USA. As many as 4 people of Indian origin have lost their lives due to drowning in the massive floods that have ravaged New York and New Jersey following Hurricane Ida. Apart from 4 dead, 2 Indian origin persons are still missing in New Jersey, where the authorities have launched a search operation with the help of drones. Local media reports said Hurricane Ida, which made landfall on August 29th in Louisiana, killed 68 so far. It is the second most destructive hurricane to hit Louisiana on record, only after Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Other states affected by the hurricane include Pennsylvania, with 4 residents dead, Maryland and Connecticut, each with at least 1 confirmed death. Indian Space Agency ISRO releases Chandrayaan-2 data as spacecraft completes 2 years in lunar orbit. India's prestigious second lunar mission Chandrayaan-2 has completed 2 years of orbiting around the moon. The Indian Space Research Organization commemorated the occasion by organizing a 2-day Lunar Science Workshop 2021 and release of Chandrayaan-2 data by its chairman, Dr. K. Sivan. Chandrayaan-2 was the second lunar exploration mission of ISRO. It consisted of a lunar orbiter and also included the Vikram lander and the Pragyan lunar rover, all of which were developed in India. The 8 payload on board Chandrayaan-2 is conducting scientific observations of the moon by remote sensing and in situ techniques. The 2-day Lunar Science Workshop is being live streamed on ISRO's website and Facebook page for effectively reaching the students, academia and institutes to engage the wisdom of the scientific community to analyze Chandrayaan-2 data. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will for the second time chair the 13th BRICS Summit on September 9th that will be held virtually. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will chair the 13th BRICS Summit on September 9th in the virtual mode. The presidents of the grouping's other 4 countries, Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil, Vladimir Putin of Russia, Xi Jinping of China, and South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa will attend. China has indicated that it could initiate discussion on the Afghanistan crisis at the summit. Meanwhile, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar blamed China for the Sino-Indian border flare-up in 2020 that took bilateral relationship in the different direction. He said the challenges in dealing with Beijing were a top priority for India. India has outlined 4 priority areas as chair: reform of the multilateral system, counter-terrorism, using digital and technological tools for achieving SDGs, and enhancing people-to-people exchanges. Leaders will also exchange views on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and other current global and regional issues, the statement said. This is the second time Prime Minister Modi will be chairing the BRICS Summit. Kuwait to resume commercial flights to India from 7th September. Kuwait will resume direct commercial flights with India from September 7, 2021. The service was stopped after the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Gulf country had suspended commercial flights from several countries, including India, on the advice of health authorities amid the COVID surge. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates has opened applications for tourist visas from all countries starting August 30th. As per the new UAE travel guidelines, tourists will need to be vaccinated with one of the COVID-19 vaccine shots approved by the World Health Organization. The UAE has been gradually easing travel rules. The country, whose biggest cities include Abu Dhabi and Dubai, started to allow residents to return earlier this month. The decision applies to citizens of all countries, including those arriving from previously banned nations, including India. Besides, passengers arriving on tourist visas must take a mandatory rapid PCR test at the airport on arrival. The passengers also need to register their vaccination status on the government's health app. India plans to become a data center hub in the next 5 years. The government is offering very lucrative incentives for this ambitious project. India is working on an ambitious incentive scheme worth up to $1.6 billion to encourage companies to set up data centers. The government is targeting an investment of $40.5 billion in the next 5 years as part of the hyperscale data center scheme and is planning to provide between 3% and 4% of capital investment as an incentive to companies, along with real estate support and faster clearances. With a vision to make India a global data center hub, the scheme's target is termed as the largest so far in terms of expected investment in the country over a period of just 5 years. Reports said the policy is currently being circulated for interministerial consultations and is expected to be sent for cabinet approval after it is finalized. The quantum of the incentive is still being discussed and could be in the range of $1.35 and $1.6 billion. The scheme, which is being spearheaded by the Ministry of Electronics and IT, will also look to promote domestic manufacturing of high-end servers. Indian scientists are testing garlic extracts for potential treatment of COVID-19. Indian scientists have been studying garlic extracts for treating the contagious and deadly COVID-19. The Center of Innovative and Applied Bioprocessing and the Regional Center for Biotechnology are jointly researching natural garlic essential oil as a potential inhibitor of ACE2 protein, the receptor that serves as the entry point for coronaviruses into human cells and the amino acids in the virus. The study may help uncover the benefits of garlic essential oil in treating COVID-19. According to a scientist, investigation of SARS-CoV-2 resistance of compounds in garlic essential oil found that the 17 organosulfur compounds accounting for 99.4% of the content of garlic essential oil have strong interactions with the amino acids of the ACE2 protein and the main protease PDB6LU7 of SARS-CoV-2. Ayurveda practitioners claim that garlic is one of the most efficient natural antibiotics against the wide spectrum of viruses and bacteria. Garlic, a common spice for flavoring food, is also used in traditional medicine prescriptions against common colds and influenza. The essential oil of garlic is known to possess organosulfur compounds that exhibit strong antioxidant, antibacterial, antifungal, anti-cancer and antimicrobial properties. Telugu OTT platform AHA has announced a new web series titled The Baker and the Beauty. Telugu OTT platform AHA, in association with Keshat International, has announced the latest web series The Baker and the Beauty that begins streaming on September 10th. The show, directed by Jonathan Edwards, is an adaptation of the globally acclaimed Israeli series by the same name.
నిన్న రాత్రి కదా ప్రపోజ్ చేస్తావు ఇంతలోనే డెసిషన్ మార్చేసుకున్నావా
The Baker and the Beauty offers a realistic picture of the conflicts and aspirations of people across Telugu middle-class households. The trailer of the series has been released that provides glimpses into the series. Lead stars are Santosh Shobhan and Tina Shilparaj.
జిందగీలో ఒకటి యాద పెట్టుకో తమ్ముడు పోరెంత కిరాకున్నదనుకో అన్ని కష్టాలు వస్తాయి.
The Baker and the Beauty is a tale of two opposites. It is an unlikely romance between a middle-class youngster Vijay, who manages his parents' small-time bakery, and a film star Airavasi Reddy, a loner at heart despite having the world at her feet.
Vijay, I think we're moving too fast.
Aira, ippudu nu Rohan kaladaniki velte manam vedipoyinatte.
That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report. Thank you for watching.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that has been the Daily India Report, and thanks Ankita for that. And of course, we know that it is brought to you by PIOTV in collaboration with Australian Indian Radio, a presentation exclusive to Brisbane Indian Times. And of course, Australian Indian Radio as the live streaming platform via Gentex Multimedia. Well, ladies and gentlemen, talking about Brisbane Indian Times, the new issue will be out this weekend. Make sure you grab your copy. This one is once again a bumper issue with lots of local functions functions and events in the covered. And as I mentioned before, that if you have any functions or any events that you'd like to have included in the newspaper, please follow the deadline and contact Rajni or Dilraj to get your articles in. And of course, all the ads come via Rajni. So, until 10 o'clock when we come back with the real estate news with the update with Usha Chandra, it's goodbye. Be good, be safe.